All right, so get this. We're going deep today, like really deep. You're diving into some spiritual teachings that offer a very unique perspective on human existence. You know those big questions like, what are we doing here and where are we going? Well, we've got this mix of teachings and dialogues to go through. And get this, they all kind of revolve around this wild concept of cyclical time
Yeah.
and wait for the potential for humans to become, well, deities.
It is fascinating stuff. It really is. And just to be clear, we're not talking about any kind of specific religious doctrine or anything like that. It's more about a distinct philosophy of consciousness, identity, and this idea that everything unfolds in cycles.
Okay. So less about dogma and more about the big picture. I get it.
Yeah.
One thing that really stood out to me from these teachings is this whole idea of transformation. They talk about going from like the most degraded humans to the most elevated humans. And honestly, that kind of phrasing, it throws me off a little. It feels, I don't know, kind of judgy. What's the real meaning there behind those terms?
Yeah, I can see how someone might react that way to that kind of language, but the text isn't trying to put anyone down or anything like that. It's more about pointing out the spectrum of possibilities that exist for the soul. The core idea here is that we are souls, not bodies.
Yeah.
And these souls are inherently pure and powerful. But over time, we can forget that true nature. We get caught up in all the stuff of the material world. And that's when we become, quote unquote, degraded in the sense of losing touch with that inner spark. So then the path to becoming, quote unquote, elevated, it's all about remembering who we really are and reconnecting with a higher power. The teachings call this the Father.
So less about being good or bad, more like we're all on this journey of remembering our potential.
Yeah, exactly. It's a journey of spiritual awakening, like shedding layers of conditioning and rediscovering that inherent connection to a source of pure goodness and power.
Okay, starting to get it. But then there's this whole other layer. The teachings mention a 5,000-year cycle, and these terms, setopratan and tamopratan. I have to admit, I'm a little lost on that part. What exactly do those terms mean?
Okay, so imagine that human civilization isn't just progressing in one straight line. Imagine it more like a cosmic dance between light and darkness. That's kind of what these terms are pointing to. So instead of Patan, that refers to like a golden age, a time of purity, peace, and spiritual enlightenment. Think of it like, when the best of humanity is shining through.
So like a utopia, when things are just clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, you could say that. It's a time when people are really connected to their spiritual essence and to each other, too. There's this real sense of harmony and a sense of shared purpose. Then there's Tamopratan, which is basically the opposite. Think about it like a descent into darkness. It's a time when there's more negativity, conflict, ignorance, like when we get stuck in those social media echo chambers and lose sight of the big picture.
Right. So it's not that humanity is like inherently bad during Tamopratan. It's more like we've collectively forgotten our true potential, gotten lost in the shadows a little bit.
Precisely. It's like a time of spiritual amnesia. We get so focused on all the external stuff and we lose touch with that inner compass.
Okay. So then where does this Father fit into all of this? Is he like the cosmic director of this whole cyclical drama?
You could think of it that way, yeah. He's described as this guiding force, this being that comes at the very end of the Tamopratan phase, like the low point, to help souls remember who they really are and kind of guide them back to that state of Satapratan, like a cosmic reset button. He's offering knowledge, reminding us of our true nature as souls.
Okay, so not a punisher for bad behavior, more like a teacher helping us get back on track.
Much better way to put it. It's not about judgment. It's not about punishment or anything like that. He's all about love, guidance, and empowerment. He just wants to help us tap back into our own inherent goodness and our potential. Now, this is where things get really interesting. The text talks a lot about this idea of an inheritance, a kingdom of happiness. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm intrigued. What is this inheritance exactly, and how do we claim it? Do we have to do something special to get in on this kingdom of happiness?
Okay, so this inheritance, it's described as this state of lasting peace and joy, but it's not a physical place. It's not like a reward you get after you die or something. It's more about a state of being, a way of experiencing life free from fear, sorrow, and attachment to material things.
So it's an internal state rather than an external reward,
Mm-hmm.
finding true happiness within ourselves regardless of the circumstances.
That's a great way to put it. And the key, according to these teachings, the key to claiming this inheritance is through understanding and applying the Father's teachings, remembering our true identity as souls, and becoming, get this, teachers to help others do the same.
Ah, the teaching element. That seems to be a recurring theme. But I have to admit, the whole concept of souls being male, as the text puts it, kind of throws me for a loop. Can you help me understand what that's all about?
I think that's a common point of confusion for many people. You know, it's important to remember that the text is using that term male in a spiritual context, not a biological one. When it says souls are male, it's highlighting a quality of energy, of inheriting that spiritual power and knowledge from the Father. It's not about gender as we understand it in the physical world, you know?
So it's about souls being spiritual heirs,
Yeah.
regardless of the physical bodies they inhabit.
Yeah.
Okay, but if all souls are essentially male in this spiritual sense, then how does reincarnation work? Do souls only ever take on male bodies?
That's a great question. And the text actually addresses this directly. It explains that while souls are spiritually male in their essence, they actually take on both male and female bodies over the cycle of 84 births. Both are necessary for the world to continue, you know, for the drama of life to unfold. So it's not about limiting souls to just one gender, but recognizing that the soul's journey involves experiencing life in all of its diverse forms.
So it's this cosmic dance between masculine and feminine energies, even though the soul itself is described as having this inheriting male quality. But what I'm really grappling with is if everything unfolds in these cycles, then does that mean our lives are predetermined? Like, do we even have free will?
That's where things get even more interesting, I think. The teachings highlight a balance between predestined roles in this grand cosmic drama, you know, and the importance of individual effort. It's like we have a part to play in this big play, but how well we play that part is up to us.
So it's not fatalism. Like
Right.
everything is set in stone. We still have choices that shape our experience within the larger cycle.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. It's this fascinating interplay of destiny and free will. The more effort we put into spiritual growth, the higher our status within the cycle and the greater our share of happiness. It's like, you know, we're given a certain hand of cards, but how we play those cards is totally up to us.
My mind is doing backflips right now. I need a minute to process this. But you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to circle back to, the whole becoming a teacher thing.
Yeah.
Why is that emphasized so much? Is it just about spreading the word, or is there something more to it?
It's both, actually. The text frames teaching not just as a selfless act, but as a powerful form of spiritual practice in and of itself. By sharing these teachings and helping others awaken, individuals actually accumulate blessings. They elevate their own spiritual status like a win-win. You're helping others and you're helping yourself at the same time.
So service to others is key to our own spiritual growth. It's not just about focusing on our own enlightenment.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we are all interconnected and that our actions have these ripple effects. By helping others remember their true selves, we're contributing to the collective elevation of consciousness. It's a beautiful concept, don't you think?
I have to admit, it is pretty mind-blowing. It makes you think differently about the impact we can all have on the world around us, even just in small ways. But hold on. I'm getting the signal that it's time for us to take a quick break. We come back in part 2, we'll delve even deeper into this whole idea of cyclical time and what it might mean for us today. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back, and I gotta say my head is still spinning a little bit from all these incredible concepts, you know, the journey of the soul, cyclical time, and this whole kingdom of happiness that's out there. It's a lot to take in, but honestly, what I think I'm struggling with most is this whole 5,000-year cycle thing. It's just such a different way of thinking about time than what we're used to.
Yeah, it's a big shift in perspective for sure. You know, we tend to think of time as linear, like a straight line from the past to the future. But these teachings are talking about something much grander, a cyclical view, where history actually repeats itself in patterns over vast, vast stretches of time.
So instead of a straight line, it's more like a spiral or something, you know, revisiting similar themes, but maybe on a higher level each time around.
Yeah, that's a great way to visualize it. It's like a cosmic dance, you know, between light and darkness. Humanity experiences these periods of spiritual ascent and descent. We move from that golden age of Satapradhan to the darker times of Tamapradhan, and then back again.
Just like the seasons, right? Spring, summer, fall, winter, they always come back around. Each one has its own unique qualities, but the cycle continues. So instead of viewing history as just this random series of events, we can see it all as part of this larger cosmic pattern.
Exactly. And it gives us this framework for understanding, the rise and fall of civilizations, the
Yeah.
ebb and flow of human consciousness over time. It really makes you wonder, where do we fit into this grand cycle? Are we like approaching the end of a Tamapradhan phase? Are we maybe on the cusp of a new Satpapradhan?
The million-dollar question.
Yeah.
I wish we had a cosmic calendar we could check,
Yeah.
but I guess that's part of the mystery. It does make you think about things differently, like history and even personal growth. Maybe our challenges aren't just random events. Maybe they're part of a larger pattern, a cosmic dance that we're all participating in.
What I find so fascinating is how these teachings can resonate on both a personal level and a collective level. We can apply these concepts to our own lives, seeing our own, ups and downs as part of a spiritual journey. But then we can also zoom out and see these cycles playing out on a much grander scale, throughout history in the evolution of humanity as a whole.
Yeah, it's a powerful perspective. Helps to put things in context, see our own struggles and our own triumphs as part of something way bigger than ourselves. But, there's one thing that's been kind of bugging me. We've talked a lot about becoming teachers as like a key part of this path, but I don't really see myself as a teacher in the traditional sense. So does that mean I'm like missing out on this whole inheritance thing?
It's a great question, and it highlights one of the really beautiful things about these teachings. They're incredibly flexible and adaptable to individual circumstances. The text doesn't limit teaching to a formal role. It's more about sharing this wisdom in whatever ways feel authentic to you.
So it's not about standing in front of a classroom or writing a book. It's more about embodying these principles in our everyday lives and just letting that shine through.
Precisely. It's about radiating this understanding, this light, in our own unique ways. It could be through our words, our actions, our creative expressions, the way we show up in the world, how we interact with others.
So even small acts of kindness, offering a helping hand, sharing a kind word, those can all be seen as forms of teaching.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we all have something to offer. We can all be conduits of light and wisdom, even in the smallest of ways. It's about, shifting from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance, realizing that the more we share, the more we have to give.
Okay, that's a beautiful way to think about it. It makes those everyday interactions feel so much more meaningful knowing that they can be these little opportunities for spiritual growth and service to others.
Hmm.
But let's be real for a second. Life isn't always, sunshine and roses. There's a lot of darkness, a lot of suffering in the world. How do these teachings address those more difficult aspects of human experience?
That's a profound question, and the text doesn't shy away from acknowledging the reality of suffering. In fact, it actually suggests that suffering is an inherent part of the Tamapradhan phase, like a consequence of our collective forgetfulness and separation from our true nature.
So it's not that suffering is a punishment or a sign that we're doing something wrong. It's more like a natural consequence of being, I don't know, out of alignment with our true selves.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's like when we try to force a square peg into a round hole, it's going to create friction and resistance. When we live in a way that's contrary to our true nature as souls, we inevitably experience suffering.
That makes a lot of sense. But it also raises another question. If suffering is a natural part of the cycle, then how do we move through it in a way that's, constructive, a way that helps us grow and evolve?
That's where the teachings offer some really valuable insights. They really emphasize the importance of understanding, acceptance, and detachment. Instead of resisting or denying our suffering, we're encouraged to observe it, to learn from it, and ultimately to detach from it.
So it's about finding that space between our experience and our reaction to it, kind of like mindfulness, where we, observe our thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a sense of inner peace and equanimity, even in the middle of all the storms of life. And this, in turn, allows us to access that kingdom of happiness that we talked about earlier. Remember, it's not about eliminating all challenges or difficulties. It's about shifting our perspective, our way of relating to those experiences so that we can find joy and fulfillment even in the midst of adversity.
Powerful message. It's like we're being empowered to create our own inner sanctuary, a place of peace and stability that we can carry with us, no matter what life throws our way.
I love that. That's a beautiful way to put it. And here's something else to consider. The text suggests that by choosing to embrace these teachings, by actively working towards our own spiritual growth, we not only benefit ourselves, but we also contribute to the collective shift towards a brighter future.
Like we're all drops in the ocean of consciousness, and every positive action, every step towards greater awareness, creates ripples that spread out and impact the whole.
Exactly. It's such a beautiful and empowering concept, you know? And it leads us to one of the most profound questions these teachings raise. If this 5,000-year cycle is true, then what role are we meant to play in this current phase of human evolution?
Wow, that's a big question. A really big question. And I think it's one that each of us needs to grapple with, on a personal level. I feel like we've covered so much ground already. I'm a little overwhelmed, to be honest.
I hear you. We've covered a lot.
Maybe it's time for a quick break to let all of this really sink in.
That sounds like a great idea.
When we come back, in part 3, we'll explore some practical ways to actually apply these teachings to our daily lives and talk about how we can all contribute to creating a more enlightened and compassionate world. Stick with us. All right, so we're back. And I have to admit, my head is still spinning from all these incredible concepts, cyclical time, spiritual inheritance, and this idea that we're all souls on this journey of transformation.
It's a lot.
A lot. But I think what I'm really wrestling with is how to actually apply these teachings to my everyday life. It all sounds amazing in theory, but what does it look like in practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's something that a lot of people grapple with. The text offers some guidance, but it's not always explicit or easy to decipher. Remember those 3 key practices we talked about: studying the Father's teachings, remembering our true identity as souls, and becoming teachers ourselves. Those are really the pillars of putting these ideas into action.
Okay, let's break those down then. Starting with studying. Does that mean I need to, spend hours poring over ancient texts or meditating in a cave somewhere? How does someone like me, with a busy life and a million things on my to-do list, actually make time for studying?
It doesn't have to be an all-or-nothing approach. It's more about finding ways to integrate these teachings into your daily routine in a way that feels, natural and sustainable for you. For some people, that might involve setting aside a specific time each day for reading or reflection, maybe meditation. For others, it might be about incorporating spiritual practices into their existing routines, like listening to a podcast on their commute or doing some mindful walking in nature.
So it's about finding what works for you, what resonates with your personal style and your lifestyle.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding your own rhythm, your own way of connecting with these truths in a way that feels authentic and enriching.
Okay, that definitely takes the pressure off. But what about this whole remembering our true identity as souls thing? That still sounds pretty abstract to me. How do we actually do that?
It's about shifting our perspective, I think, shifting our sense of self. Remember, the core premise here is that we are souls, not bodies. And so much of our identity gets wrapped up in, our physical forms, our roles, our possessions, our achievements. Remembering our true identity is about peeling back those layers, quieting the mind and connecting with that deeper essence within that spark of pure consciousness that resides at our core.
So it's about recognizing that we are something more than just our thoughts, our emotions, our experiences. We are that which observes all of those things, that eternal spark of awareness. I can see how meditation and mindfulness practices would be helpful for cultivating that kind of awareness.
Absolutely. Mindfulness is such a powerful tool for connecting with our true nature. It's about learning to observe our thoughts and our feelings without getting, carried away by them, to find that space of stillness and clarity within. And, it doesn't require sitting on a cushion for hours on end. You can bring mindfulness into any activity: washing dishes, walking the dog, even waiting in line at the grocery store. It's about bringing a quality of presence and awareness to each and every moment.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these seemingly abstract concepts can be woven into the fabric of our daily lives. But then there's still that third pillar, becoming teachers. I have to admit, I'm still a little hung up on that one. I don't know if I have the knowledge or the confidence to be a teacher. Does that mean I can't fully claim my inheritance in this kingdom of happiness?
Here's the good news. Becoming a teacher doesn't have to mean, standing on a stage or having all the answers. It's about embodying these principles in your own life and letting your actions speak louder than words.
So walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And you know what? The most powerful teachers are often the ones who are still learning themselves, who are humble enough to admit that they don't have it all figured out. It's about sharing your insights and your experiences authentically without pretense or judgment.
That's a relief.
Yeah.
So it's not about being perfect or having some grand message to proclaim. It's more about living in alignment with these teachings, being kind and compassionate, and letting our light shine through in our interactions with others.
That's beautifully put. And here's the wonderful paradox. The more we focus on helping others, the more we grow ourselves. The act of sharing, of giving back, it deepens our own understanding and helps us to really integrate these principles into our lives. It's like this ripple effect. We make a difference in the world, and the world makes a difference in us.
I love that. It's a reminder that we're all interconnected. Our actions have a ripple effect that extends far beyond ourselves. But let's be real for a moment. We live in a world that often feels pretty chaotic, pretty unpredictable.
Yeah.
How do these teachings help us to navigate those challenging times? Those moments when we feel lost or confused or overwhelmed.
Yeah. That's where this concept of the 5,000-year cycle can be really helpful. Remember, the text suggests that we're currently in a Tamapradhan phase, a time of darkness and disharmony. Understanding this larger context, it can really help us make sense of the challenges that we're facing, both individually and collectively.
So instead of feeling like we're failing or that the world is falling apart, we can recognize that we're all part of a larger cycle, a cosmic dance between light and darkness. It's like having that bigger picture perspective can help us to not get so caught up in the drama of the moment.
Exactly. It's not about denying the reality of suffering or pretending that everything is fine. It's about recognizing that these challenges are all part of a larger process, a journey of collective transformation. And within that journey, there are always opportunities for growth, for learning, and ultimately for the emergence of a new dawn.
That's a powerful message of hope. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there's a light within us that can never be extinguished. And by cultivating that light, by sharing it with others, we can contribute to the collective awakening that these teachings point toward.
Beautifully said. And if we connect this back to the idea of the kingdom of happiness, it becomes even more inspiring. That inheritance isn't something we have to wait for in some distant future or, after we die. It's a state of being that's available to us right here, right now, regardless of our circumstances.
So about finding that inner peace, that joy, that sense of connection to something greater than ourselves, even amidst all the ups and downs of life.
That's the essence of it. And it's not a passive state. It's something that we cultivate through our choices, our actions, our commitment to living in alignment with these teachings.
I think you've given us all a lot to ponder today. It's been a truly incredible deep dive into a really transformative philosophy.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep shining your light.